Okay, welcome back everybody. Today we're going to go ahead and do a little program where we're going to take 4 buttons and change properties of a movie clip. You can see on my stage right now I have a movie clip. He's added to the penguin layer, and this particular movie clip is called Penguin MC. Again, MC is for movie clip. On a second layer here, the buttons layer, I've got 4 buttons, and each one has a label. These are static text fields, and the buttons are each named according to their function. So I've used the first 3 letters of rotate. This guy is called ROT button, so he's down here. I can use that name when I'm coding an Actionscript. This guy is SCA button, ALP button, and MOV button, respectively. So now these guys are set on the stage. At the time the program is running, they're each labeled, remind me what each button does, and they're going to change properties of this movie clip. Now in the top layer up here, I've got my AS3 for Actionscript 3 layer, and I'm going to come into Windows and go into Actions, and now I can see I've already got the code written. What I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this code down below the first one here, and we'll go ahead and talk about how to do this. Mostly I'm going to be cutting and pasting. So this is the code for the rotate button. Again, I called that button on the stage ROT button. And as we did before, I've added an event listener. Everything in Flash is driven by event listeners. Specifically, I'm listening for a mouse event, and the mouse event I'm listening for is click. When I click the mouse, the event listener will hear it, or more specifically, when I click the rotation button, I'm going to call this code, and I've called this function rotate penguin. That's down here. Same format we used before. We have a function. I called it rotate penguin. So when I click the button, I'll call this. I'm accepting a parameter, which is an event parameter from the event listener is going to send a mouse event. I'm not going to use it, but I have to accept it because the event listener is going to send it. I'm not going to return anything, so I've used the keyword void. And I use my open curly brackets and close curly brackets to define the function. The only thing I'm going to do when I click on the mouse is I'm going to go ahead and change a property of the movie clip. So my movie clip name, back on the stage, I named it penguin_MC, and I've attached it to the property with a dot operator, and I'm changing its rotation property. Every time I click on that button, the rotation property of the movie clip is going to be decreased by 10. I've used this shorthand notation here, minus equals 10. It's going to change by 10 degrees. Okay? The second function says that, again attached to the rotate button, I've got an event listener. I'm listening for another mouse event, but this time I'm listening for mouse out. And that means that when I take my mouse off of that button, then I'm going to call this function. I've called this rotate reset. And what rotate reset is going to do is it's going to go ahead and set my rotation of my movie clip back to simply equal to 0. If I run this program, we're going to find out that when I click on the button, I'm subtracting 10 degrees from the rotation each time I click on the button, and when I take my mouse off of the button, he resets to 0. Now let's go ahead and do similar things for scale, alpha, and move. To do that, I'll go ahead and close this. I'm going to copy all of this code, and I just have to change a few things to change the scale. Okay, so first of all, I don't want to hit the rotate button in this case. I want to hit the button called SCA button, so I'll change both of these guys to SCA. And instead of rotate penguin, I'm going to call another function called scale penguin, and I'm going to go ahead and do another fourth function called scale reset. So I've got to use those same names down here now. If I have rotate penguin, I'm going to change this to scale penguin and scale reset. I'll copy that down here and call this function scale reset. Now, the scale functions, there's actually a scale X and scale Y I can use, but in this case I'm just going to go ahead and change the width, and I'm going to change the height. So I'll go ahead and copy this and say change the height. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 10 pixels from the height and 10 pixels from the width every time I hit this particular button, the SCA button. And then same thing down here. I'm going to go ahead and set them back. So I'll go ahead and copy this code. I'm going to copy it down into this function. And what I'm going to do here is I want them set them back to their original. So I'll get rid of the minus sign here and here. And the original penguin, the height was or the width rather, was 252, and the height was 293. So I just set those back to what they originally were, and that should reset it. Let's go ahead and see if this works. We're going to go ahead, and when I rotate the penguin, he rotates counterclockwise 10 degrees each time I click the button. Take my mouse off the button, it sets back. Same thing down here, the scale now, he is shrinking 10 pixels in the height and 10 pixels in the width every time I hit this button. When I take my mouse off the button, he resets back to where he was. Okay? The code for the next two buttons are going to be so similar. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this. The third button is going to be the alpha button. So I'll go ahead and say alpha button. And I use the first three letters of alpha, so ALP here and ALP here. And here, I'm not going to change the scale, I'm going to change the alpha. Alpha, again, is for its opacity. And I go ahead and use those two names. So I'll copy this guy down here. I'll call the function alpha penguin. And I've got a function called alpha reset. So I'll call this guy alpha reset. And I'll change its alpha property. So the alpha property is just alpha. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and subtract, instead of 10, I'm going to subtract 10%, so that's 0.1. And that's going to change its alpha quality, or property. And the same thing down here, when I take my mouse off the button, I want to change its alpha property again. And in this case, I'm going to set it back to 1, which means it's not invisible, it's fully visible. Let's go ahead and run this and see if it works. Okay, good, no errors. I've got a rotation backwards, that's good. Got this guy, scales down, that's good. Now alpha, I'm going to decrease its opacity by 10%, so if I click this 10 times, he should completely disappear. And there he goes, completely gone with 10 clicks. Take my mouse off, the penguin comes back, and he's not invisible anymore. Okay, so that's 3 of the 4 buttons. We have one more. I'm going to go ahead and move the penguin. You guys have already seen this in previous videos, but I can move things just by changing the X and Y properties, which give the location of the movie clip on the stage. So the event listener is attached to now the move button, and I'm going to call a function called move penguin. And when I take my mouse off, I've got mouse out attached to the second event listener. I'm going to go ahead and call move reset and use those same two names down here. So I'll go ahead and copy that name here, and I've got move reset. I'll copy that guy right here. And now I'm going to change the X and the Y properties. So I don't want to change it by 0.1. Let's go ahead and change this by, let's say, 20 pixels each time I do this. I'm going to change the X coordinate, and I'm going to change the Y coordinate of the penguin each time I click on the move button, and that will move the penguin across the stage. When I reset this guy, I'll go ahead and come down here. When I take my mouse off of the move button, I want it to go back to where it originally was, so I'll just set it equal to those values. And the X value when I originally had my penguin on the stage was 376, and the Y coordinate of the movie clip when I originally had it was 199. Let's go ahead and see if this works. Again, move, he's moving across the stage. I take my mouse off, he moves back. Alpha, he disappears, take my mouse off, he comes back. Scale changes, and the rotation changes. Again, you can play with this and tweak it if you wanted to change this, for instance, to a plus. Now the X coordinate is going to increase every time I hit, so he's going to move in a different direction. If I wanted to change this guy to a plus, now remember plus is down with respect to the Y coordinate, and so now he's going to move down. Okay. That's it for today. Bye-bye.